Hello, my name is Tais Yáñez. I'm an independent researcher based in London, but I'm originally from Mexico. And this is a late recording of a paper I presented at the 5th International Conference on Post-Colonialism, Post-Communism, and Postmodernism, chaired by University of Gdansk and the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. I'm going to share my screen right now with you. And in the meantime, I'll tell you that well, my paper is on cultural resistance, memory, and solidarity during and after the Bosnian War and Genocide. First, I really need to explain my positionality and my my viewpoints. So my viewpoint is I'm an outsider. I have a deep commitment with solidarity and connection and a very lifelong special interest in Yugoslavia and specifically Bosnia and Herzegovina. I am indigenous from Mexico, from Latin America, which is a territory where our peoples are still resisting the ongoing physical and cultural genocide. Therefore, my motivation can also partly be summed up by something Tatiana Taksheva said, an exceptionally important form of multi-ethnic solidarity that is of great significance to ongoing peace and reconciliation processes, always bearing in mind that reconciliation and healing may take different paths, shapes, and times. I believe the depth and scope of this research is much wider, but for this particular paper is obviously shortened. And I need to say that I am discussing the actions taken by the people, and non-governmental cultural institutions, no governments or the UN High Representative or official organizations. With that said, I will now stop my video and keep sharing the screen. So this research aims to contribute to the understanding of aspects of culture of remembrance in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's hoped that these stories help us, like Danchev says, to recognize others and in the process ourselves. I aim to promote solidarity and connection with Bosnia and Herzegovina, but not only, and help counter denial and minimization or even glorification from perpetrators mainly, but not only, as we will see later. This study uses a variety of methods. It's based on empirical ethnographic and autoethnographic research in Bosnia and Herzegovina, carried out independently and in collaboration with Bosnian-run research centers, like the Post-Conflict Research Center and Balkan Discourse, and all that in 3 different visits to Bosnia, specifically Sarajevo, Srebrenica, Jajce, and Mostar. It is grounded in historical background and literary and artistic sources on culture and resistance, centering former Yugoslavian scholars and creators whenever possible. Also, materials can be lent by the Museum of History Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Siege of Sarajevo Museum. And also, I conducted exclusive short interviews with Laibach, author named Bosniak, and staff at the aforementioned museums, as well as the Museum of the Second Session of the Anti-Fascist Council for the National Liberation of Yugoslavia, AVNOJ. Here you can see a map of Bosnia and Herzegovina with the cold stats of war and genocide. together with artworks by Bosnian artists who knew the future had to know what happened to them, as well as a painting by a Scottish artist, which highlights the solidarity that we're speaking about today. Some background: the Bosnian War, very shortly, in the first half of the 1990s, resulted in whole cities and towns being ethnically cleansed of Bosnian Muslims, Bosniaks, and Croats as well, by the Serb forces. A euphemism for systematic rape, torture, murder, according to Gottman. As early as April 92, the Serb forces established camps specifically to carry out this criminal enterprise, specifically the genocide of Bosniaks. It also included, the toll was about 1,000 Sarajevans killed or maimed by snipers, or by the 500,000 total Nestrom during the 1,425-day-long siege. The planned genocide of Bosniaks amounted to 8,372 murdered men and boys in Srebrenica, 5,200 in Prijedor, where Muslims in Prijedor were forced to wear a white armband for identification from May 1992. 3,000 killed people in Visegrad, 2,704 in Foča, and thousands more torture, raped, and murder across death camps, and still some people are being recovered from the camps and mass graves in Omarska, Bosanski Novi, Bosanski Samac, Maniatsa, etc. The war also left 1.5 million refugees within the former Yugoslavia and over 500,000 outside the Western Balkans. But this was not enough. They also had to destroy the cultures. Milan Kundera said, the first step in liquidating a people is to erase its memory, destroy its books, its culture, its history. Perpetrators of genocide know that if they try to exterminate a people, survivors may come back because they cannot kill everyone. And it is only by the malicious destruction of works of art and culture, like Lemkin describes cultural genocide, that they make sure that decades, even centuries later, they won't appear in history books, like they never existed. Like music producer Nenad Kovacevic said, they were burning everything we were proud of in Bosnia and Yugoslavia. This plaque that you can see in the slide is outside the city hall in Sarajevo, and it's a reminder of the night of 25th and 26th of August 1992, when the Serb forces set fire to a most beloved symbol of the multi-ethnic and multicultural capital of Bosnia, the National Library in Sarajevo, now the city hall. The Serb forces razed it to the ground, along with over 2 million books, archives, and documents, none of which were of military nature, but reflected the rich Slavic, Ottoman, and Austro-Hungarian heritage of the city that is known as the Jerusalem of Europe. In an act of defiance, as you can see in these pictures, the librarians and Sarajevan residents joined hands to try and salvage as many books as possible, resulting in the death of librarian Aida Budorovic. One of the most famous images of resistance of the time is musician Vedran Smailovic playing the cello in the ruins of the Vijesnica, which is also a name for the city hall. Now it's back to its former glory, thanks to funds from the EU and other foreign heritage organizations. The Orbicide and cultural genocide focused a lot on Muslim sites of worship, famously the Ottoman times Mostar Bridge, now rebuilt, now it's a UNESCO site. But then the Institute for Protection of Cultural, Historical, and National Heritage of Bosnia and Herzegovina accounts for the destruction of 1,186 mosques, 69 Quran course sites, 218 rooms, prayer rooms, over 400 pieces of Bosnian heritage, etc. Lucky, the communities have managed to rebuild some of it sometimes, despite the current local authorities for political reasons, how Bosnia is divided. Luckily, fortunately, resistance is very well alive in everywhere in Sarajevo and Bosnia. Resistance to oblivion is in the streets, in buildings, in floors. You only have to walk and look up and down, right and left. There are thousands of stories in bricks, in street art. The buildings carry the trauma of their inhabitants. The bullets embedded in the buildings, as in people's minds, have not been repaired. I was told, we were told, not really because of the neglect of politicians or lack of money or willingness, but because people want them to stay like that, to remember as a warning. We find murals to their fallen, people who died for defending Bosnia, sometimes even Bosnian Serbs who joined the Bosnian forces as well. We also find Sarajevo roses where bombs fell and killed and maimed, and Sarajevans turned them into artistic memorials. Srebrenica flowers, which are the symbol of the genocide in general of Bosniaks, with the green representing the Muslim community. There is also, it is very worth mentioning, the Yugo nostalgia that is prevalent as well in some parts. You can see that even in bars and restaurants, most of these pictures are actually restaurants and bars. The one on the left-hand side is the Avno Museum, which organizes and holds events to commemorate the expressions of tolerance and peaceful multi-ethnic coexistence and mutual respect that were prevalent in Yugoslavia, or so is claimed, as Takshera explains. There is also this slogan, apart from the pictures of Tito, which are also everywhere. This slogan, death to fascism, freedom to the people, smor to fascismo, slogan narodu, is also found in many cultural and social spaces. You also have film and literature and documentaries, which are, for me, they represent the impossibility of denial, and the resistance to the cultural resistance to the cultural genocide that of where they were victims. Oral history, as I mentioned, is a personality, and so do true stories. These two films, for example, are based on true stories. Quo Vadis Aida is about the Srebrenica massacre, and Halima's Path is about stories of the genocide in the countryside in Bosnia. There's this book of author, oral historian Nermin Bosniak, who compiled 17 testimonies, 17 stories of survivors who, like himself, share their stories as part of, he claimed that it was part of his personal healing, and because it was difficult for the survivors to share to share their stories with him. It was therefore part of the collective act of healing and reconciliation as well. There is a very prolific documentary maker, Abdo Husajnovic, who has made lots of documentaries on the atrocities in Prijedor, in Visegrad, in Foča, and other places. Now on to music. This is a very important part of the resistance during the war. Specific examples, specifically, to start with, is the Eurovision Song Contest in 1993, which is the first time that Bosnia and Herzegovina participated in a contest, or indeed an international event as an independent country. Is one of the most inspiring and hard stories of resistance and standing up against the embargo and silence in Europe. Bosnia was represented by Mohamed Fazlakish and his band composed of 3 musicians and 2 backup singers. It was commonly known as Fazla. He was in fact writing songs and fighting with the territorial army, then with the Bosnian army. And their participation was, in his own words, a symbolic interaction to explain through music the fight for independence against aggression and genocide. Unwittingly, perhaps, Bosnia's presence also had the other effect to break perceptions of Muslims as monoliths and challenge the West stereotypes. Fazla cannot be a Mohammed because he's blonde, they told him, for example. And Ismeta, one of the backup singers, recalls being told that it was weird that Muslim women were wearing miniskirts. But the real story here is how they actually got there. The Bosnian delegation had to cross Sarajevo, avoiding shells and snipers, run through the mountains, and then through the airport to board a charter plane. Fazla recalls losing his shoes as he got stuck in the mud, and he had to do the last kilometer barefoot. Very heartbreaking is that all the way they'd see people fall in front of them, hit by snipers. And luckily at the end they made it to Ljubljana for the selection, then Ireland for the great final. This photo is really important, this photo here on the left, because it shows Fazla turn his back on the audience as a symbol of how the world was ignoring Bosnia and Herzegovina and everything what was happening. This clip, this 3-minute clip of Bosnia in Eurovision is immortalized as part of the cultural wealth in the Museum of History of Bosnia. Resistance as well is very important to say, was the effort people in Bosnia made to watch the contest because, well, there was no electricity in many parts of Sarajevo, for example. People had to go to great lengths to find batteries, electricity, a television that worked, and get together, which was amazing. In 1994, Bosnia went to the contest in Ireland again, was held in Ireland again, with Alma and Dejan and their song Osoni Krav Mene, which means stay by my side. And their their journeys were also difficult back to Ireland and also back to Sarajevo or into exile. Some people that were in their delegation. They were both very welcomed and applauded. Lamentably, the support and solidarity from audiences in Ireland and across Europe did not translate into effective action to stop the siege and genocide, which continued till 1996. I argued it gave the people of Bosnia a moral victory both times, despite the silence of the international community. Then we have Rock Under Siege on the 14th of January 1995. This concert was organized by Radio Seed Sarajevo, which was founded in 1992 at the beginning of the war. It was, in their own words, quote, committed to support the very active music on the ground scene in Sarajevo. It became internationally known as one of the symbols of Sarajevo's spiritual resistance against the siege and all forms of nationalism. Radio Seed was so important, in fact, that the Netherlands donated equipment and money so they could continue the transmissions. There were 14 different groups, bands from Bosnia, Sarajevo, and Bosnia in general, like the band Sikter and the band Siver. Their weapons fire rocked of morale and a way to forget the terror outside, because they chose punk and music as their weapons. And they were also tickets to, I quote, teletransport to London, Amsterdam, New York, and peaceful cities. Like Danchev discusses, it is not only how they dealt with it, what happened to them, but what they did with the experience, and how they helped their people. In other acts of solidarity from outsiders, non-Bosnians, we have two important ones. One I will mention really briefly. Ross Dickinson of Iron Maiden fame came in on the 14th of December 1994 with his side project Conworks, invited by Mayor Morris, British peacekeeper Mayor Martin Morris. Despite the UN best efforts to ask them to leave, they actually played. The United Nations seemingly wanted them to cancel the concert because, I quote, it would upset the Serbs. However, the concert went through, and it was necessary, according to Major Morris, quote, to provide the city's teenagers with brief respite from the conflict that has surrounded them for 2 years and an escape from the atrocities they already witnessed. End of quote. Dickinson's visit became so legendary that he was granted honorary citizenship, and there is a documentary about the event, Scream for Me Sarajevo, which was made by Bosnian filmmaker Jasenko Pasic in 2017. Then we move to Laibach. Laibach solidarity actions are unique, very unique, not only because they are also from the former Yugoslavia, but for three main reasons. One, the connection and continuity of the collaboration with Bosnian cultural institutions and with Bosnian people in general, such as Radio Seed, the Museum of History, and the Mojo Festival. Theirs was solidarity, not charity. It was openly critical of Europe and NATO, and very significantly rejected and mocked the jingoistic and nationalistic ideology that has ravaged the former republics of Yugoslavia. The solidarity was recognizing beyond Bosnia, because, as they explained, a quote, even the most ardent enemies of anything Bosnian never blamed us for concentrating in Sarajevo during the war, instead, for example, in Serbia or somewhere else. End of quote. Three, their commitment to liberation even earned them an award for being anti-fascist, a feeling of vindication that makes them, quote, happy that at least in Bosnia we have been clearly put on the side of anti-fascism. That's unique in itself in Bosnia, despite the complicated system and tensions, because it means the country holds a very proud partisan tradition that comes from the Second World War, where Yugoslavia self-liberated from the Nazis and their collaborators Ustasha, and also ultranationalist Chetniks, Service Chetniks. Therefore, anti-fascism is not a demonized, radical, violent minority as in most of Europe. And even I witnessed children, school children, in a commemoration for their fallen, singing the Italian song Bella Ciao, an anti-fascist anthem. Anyway, who are they? Laibach is a Slovenian multimedia art collective, self-proclaimed producers of statements and a concrete possibility of politicized art. They have often been falsely accused of being proto-fascist since their formation in post-Tito's Yugoslavia, and as they mix harmony and chaos, themes and aesthetics used by authoritarians, including, as Goddard states, the totalitarian dimensions of late capitalism and its global popular culture, end of quote, such as the human need for mass worship, cult of personality, etc. Slovenian Marxist Zizek, philosopher Zizek, thinks that everything the collective does is transgression in order to mock and expose fascism and authoritarianism in their naked form, so it self-destructs. And what did Laibach do? On the 20th and 21st of November 1995, the same day, the Dayton Agreement was reached by the presidents of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, and incredibly Milosevic for Serbia, all while Sarajevo was still being shelled and on the siege. Laibach first performed in National Theater in Sarajevo. You can see the pictures here on the left, bottom left, as part of their aptly named Occupy NATO tour. These concerts, according to local organizers Radio Seed, again, had a fantastic feeling of unity, and everybody worked for each other, and the community functioned as they commented. Laibach had no pretensions enough to believe they changed history. These days, both understand the great significance of Sarajevo in Bosnia, of Sarajevo and Bosnia in general in history since World War I. As they say, quote, European political history dramatically purged itself of its symptoms and tested its pettiness in Sarajevo, as they said in their manifesto read that day in 1995. Today, when asked if they believe they help raise people's morale with these concerts, they reply they, quote, probably represented to the people of Sarajevo a glimmer of hope that the future still exists and that maybe it has some prospect. Thus tonight, Laibach declares Sarajevo part of the landless free state of Neue-Slowenische Kunst, a state between the dissolution of Yugoslavia and transnational integration, and issued a few hundred attendees with NSK passports. Another symbol, the first passport since the Yugoslavian one. Thus separating the free people of the first global state of the universe from a Europe whose truth is evil itself. The NSK Laibach is a state which they quote, accepts every nation and does not differentiate between them, and propagates and advocates the transnational principle and understands the people as a community that is not characterized or burdened by belonging to our common name, myths about common ancestor or historical paradigm, elements of a common culture or identification with a certain homeland, but which therefore nurtures a sense of deep social solidarity, and it practices love without borders. End of quote. In March 2018, the History Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina had members of Laibach inaugurate the NSK Drešava Sarajevo, State of Sarajevo, a permanent exhibition about this particular concert, which has another reason to make them proud, considering there is a prevalent shameful animosity, denial, and a fractured Bosnian state after Dayton. On Tuesday, 9th of May 2023, Laibach returned to the National Theatre to perform Wir sind das Volk, based on the works of the late German playwright Henry Müller. And they had this banner outside the National Theatre that reads, "We're all one people." With the background of the VE celebrations at the Eternal Flame, Laibach's performance closed this year's memory module component of the MES Festival. The memory module is an artistic project of resistance itself and has run in the city since 1996. And it seeks to, quote, preserve the memory of the tragic past of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as the recognition of the cultural and artistic values that occurred during the siege of the city. The project focuses specifically on art as a blend of aesthetic and ethical, end of quote, and it enables healing through art and encourages open debate on how so-called advanced civilizations still allow practical, physical, cultural genocide and religious hate to happen in a Europe where never again is repeated every May, despite the silence from genocides happening at the present time as well. Memory module awarded Laibach for contribution to anti-fascism and the preservation of the culture of memory. Mihad Kreshevrianovich, director of the festival, reminded the audience that in May, that Laibach, quote, was among the few who recognized the importance of that fight and of coming to the city under siege, end of quote. Worth mentioning quickly the museums that I've spoken about, the history of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Siege of Sarajevo Museum, which is a new museum opening in April, which is curated by historians and survivors, and it presents the life of ordinary, I would say extraordinary people that lived in Sarajevo and resisted, and how their lives were during the 1,425 days of siege. And you have in Gdańsk, for example, the Museum of the Second Session of the Anti-Fascist Council. That's, to name a few, Sarajevo has many museums. My conclusion in the end is a personal reflection that resistance and solidarity for any peoples that have survived genocide, in this case, Bosnia and Herzegovina, is not a specific act. It cannot be measurable. It is a daily action of support and validation of trauma and joy even after the tragedy. Existence is resistance is not just a survival slogan. In Bosnia in particular, you need to consider that most of the areas where crimes and genocide were committed were given to the Serb-run Republic of Srpska, one of the two entities that represent Bosnia and Herzegovina, divided by the Dayton Accords. A very confusing message for humanity that genocide pays, as Albanian thinker Muhaj states. Denial is rife in Serbian circles and even in sectors of the left, also some sectors of the Croatian population, sectors of the left as well, internationally, where the genocide is reduced and relegated to a generic serious crime, as Tatiana Dordevich says, reflects. We have people like Chomsky stating that he'd not call it a, quote, genocide just for killing a bunch of people you don't like. Bosnia and Herzegovina does not have a law against this, against denial and minimization or glorification. Perhaps, as Adnan Husnik explains, it is due to the political elites thriving on maintaining the division. Moreover, there is glorification of the crimes with murals, even in the face of mourners commemorating the Srebrenica genocide, as it happened in July 2023, just recently. And therefore, it is in this context that the resistance, remembrance, and solidarity are not about the past only, but an ongoing global collective project that ought not to be silent or silenced. Lastly, I just want to say Vala Puno, Laibach, Nermin Bosniak, Elma Isanel at the Historiski Museum Bosnia Herzegovina, Allen and the Museum Obsada Sarajeva, and staff at the museum, at the Musei Sazinada Avnoya, Erna from Balkan Discourse, and Amina from the PCRC. Thank you very much. Vala.